Imagine the most vibrant, bustling cities on Earth. You know, our massive hubs of culture, finance, and human history. Now, imagine them being completely swallowed by the sea. It sounds like the plot of a dystopian sci-fi movie, right? But for coastal metropolises across the globe, it's actually a looming, physical reality. Welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving into the colossal, multi-billion-dollar megastructures humanity has built to literally hold back the ocean.
So what exactly happens when the immense, totally unpredictable power of the ocean decides to come for our greatest urban centers? The stakes here are almost unimaginably high. We are currently locked in this global battle between human engineering and a relentless rising tide. And to really understand what we're up against, we have to look at the worst-case scenario. What happens if these modern marvels actually fail?
80 billion pounds. That is roughly 100 billion US dollars. And that is the estimated economic wipeout London alone would face in a worst-case flooding event. Think about it. If the water breached the city's defenses, within hours, vital networks like the London Underground would be completely submerged. Over 1 million residents would be in immediate, life-threatening danger. So we aren't just talking about protecting a few streets here, we are defending entire economies and millions of lives.
Section 1. The Global Threat. Cities on the Brink.
Section 2. The Dutch Standard. Masters of the Delta.
Following a tragic and devastating North Sea flood back in 1953, the Netherlands pretty much pioneered an entirely new global standard for water management. The sheer mechanical genius of one of their most famous structures, the Thames Barrier, is just incredible. It's actually the only storm surge barrier on Earth with such massive movable parts. When a violent storm threatens the coast, these hollow doors flood with water, float right into the middle of the river, and then sink down onto a mud-free concrete bed, completely sealing off the waterway.
To really wrap your head around the cinematic scale of this thing, consider this. When those doors are closed, they have to withstand 350 meganewtons of force. To put that into perspective, that's equivalent to the weight of 350,000 strong men, each weighing a solid 200 pounds, all pushing against the gates at the exact same time. It's an absolute triumph of engineering.
And you have to understand, this wasn't just another infrastructure project. It was a deeply emotional milestone for a nation literally forged by water. When the Delta Works was officially opened, Queen Beatrix spoke these historic words. "The storm surge barrier is closed. The Delta Works are complete." It really marked the culmination of decades of pure national resolve.
Section 3. Shielding the Metropolises. London and New York.
But hey, the Dutch aren't the only ones playing defense here. The Thames Barrier protecting London is a formidable 520-meter-wide line of steel gates. And while a full controlled closure takes about 90 minutes, in a sudden, catastrophic crisis, the barrier can be deployed in just 15 minutes. They rapidly rotate those massive gates up from the riverbed to block a damaging tidal surge. It's incredibly suspenseful but highly effective.
Across the Atlantic, New York City had its own devastating wake-up call with Superstorm Sandy. Their major response includes the Big U, which is this proposed 10-mile resilient flood protection system designed to essentially encircle Lower Manhattan. Because the city is so incredibly dense, engineers have to delicately weave this armor over vital utility lines, complex subway tunnels, and major highways. It's basically a masterclass in trying to fit massive defense systems into a highly constrained concrete jungle.
Section 4. The Sinking Cities. Venice and New Orleans.
While London and New York are busy building walls, cities like Venice and New Orleans face an even more insidious problem. The ground beneath them is actually physically sinking. Venice's solution is the mind-blowing MOSE project, which operates entirely by stealth. Right now, 78 massive metal gates lie completely submerged on the ocean floor, preserving the city's iconic historical landscape. When a high tide threatens, compressed air expels the water inside the gates, causing them to pivot up in under 30 minutes to block the Adriatic Sea.
Meanwhile, down in the U.S., New Orleans relies on a staggering 9,100 kilometers of levees and floodwalls. But the challenge here is a brutal geographic irony. By heavily channeling the mighty Mississippi River to prevent seasonal flooding, engineers accidentally starved the delta of the natural sediment that historically built the land up in the first place. So the city just keeps sinking, all while fighting immense logistical hurdles to maintain its vast pumping networks. For the people working to save these cities, this isn't just a day job, it's a calling. Andrea Rinaldo, who heads the scientific committee for the Venice Lagoon Authority, perfectly summed up the fierce passion of those defending these cultural jewels. When he was asked if the artistic heritage of Venice would eventually be lost to the sea, his response was completely defiant. "Over my dead body."
Section 5. The underground temples, pumping the flood.
So far, we've mostly talked about keeping the ocean out, but what happens if extreme rainfall floods a city from the inside? Well, the contrast in Tokyo is just unbelievable. This is the G-Cans project, often referred to as the underground temple. When it's empty, tourists actually marvel at it, like it's a beautiful, brutalist cathedral. But when it's full, it transforms into a violent, totally sealed sewer system, furiously managing 200 cubic meters of heavy brown floodwater every single second to protect the urban sprawl above. And here is a totally mind-bending engineering fact for you. The 59 massive pillars inside that chamber, they aren't actually holding the roof up at all. They're ballasts. They weigh 500 tons each. Without them, the immense upward pressure of the groundwater surrounding the chamber would literally push the empty concrete tank right up through the earth like a buoyant balloon. Crazy, right?
The sheer scale of G-Cans is honestly hard to overstate. Water from overflowing rivers drops straight down into 5 vertical shafts, and each one of those is large enough to comfortably hold the entire Statue of Liberty. From there, the water is forcefully pumped out into a larger, safer river by massive turbines that are actually capable of draining a standard Olympic swimming pool in just 4 seconds.
Section 6. The limits of engineering. Ticking clocks. Now, as awe-inspiring as these megastructures are, and they are some of the most impressive feats in human history, they bring us to a pretty sobering reality. The climate clock is ticking way faster than our infrastructure can actually keep up. The Thames Barrier opened back in the 1980s, and initial predictions suggested it might only be fully effective until 2030, yet a replacement might not even arrive until the 2040s. And Venice's MOSE project, it was only inaugurated in 2020, but a predicted 1-meter sea level rise threatens to render it completely obsolete almost immediately. And you might be thinking, well, why not just leave the gates closed permanently? Venice is finding out the hard way why that doesn't work. First off, the lowest parts of the city, like the San Marco area, still flood before the barriers are even triggered at 80 centimeters. Second, every single closure costs upwards of 300,000 euros and completely halts commercial shipping. But most alarmingly, if you keep it closed too often, the lagoon loses its natural tidal flush. It would suffer from massive excess algae and oxygen depletion, turning what is a delicate marine ecosystem into a filthy, stagnant pond. The reality is, the mega projects of the 20th and early 21st centuries bought us some incredibly precious time, but they are already reaching their operational limits. When talking about the desperate search for a Plan B for Venice, Andrea Rinaldo pointed out a terrifying truth: we can't wait. The time it takes to actually design and build these massive structures is pretty much the exact amount of time we have before the water finally breaches them. Which leaves us with a really lingering, provocative question. We've built stunning underground cathedrals, we've floated massive steel gates down rivers, and we've poured millions of tons of concrete just to hold back the tide. But as the oceans inevitably continue to rise, can we truly engineer our way out of this forever? Or is humanity eventually going to have to make some hard choices about changing where and how we live? Take that away and really think about it. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and as always, keep questioning the world around you.